Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to this new video. It's great to have you here again. Once again, we're talking about a new attachment for the MAKITA multifunction drives, specifically today for earthworks. And of course, you know what it's about, precisely the cultivator, also known as the MAKITA attachment. In this video, we'll explore what this piece has to offer, who would benefit from investing in it, or if it's just a toy. That's exactly what we're going to find out together in today's video. I'm very excited, so let's get started after the intro. But if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to this channel for free right now and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. You can find the current prices of these devices in the video description below. Thank you so much for your support, and now let's get started after the intro. Yes, this is the big cultivator attachment from MAKITA for the multifunction drives, the KR401MP, designed for loosening soils, beds, and similar tasks. We'll explore what this attachment has to offer and how it performs, especially in connection with a battery-powered multifunction drive. As you can imagine, a considerable amount of power is needed for this. We'll find out together in today's video, but let's start with the product box and, of course, the contents, as you can see. On the product boxes of the MAKITA cultivator attachments, both the 400 and the KR401MP, there isn't much to see from the outside. We have the typical MAKITA logo, an illustration of the attachment, and the label in multiple languages. That's about it. There's no additional information here. Therefore, I suggest we take a look at what's inside the product box. Besides the complicated packaging, on the far right of the product box, we first find the instruction manual for the cultivator attachment in multiple languages, although it's quite thin. Next, there's a small Torx key for the cultivator attachment, and finally, the actual attachment, KR401MP. That's all there is to it, as you can see in terms of contents. This means there isn't much included, but the essential items are there, namely the actual KR401MT cultivator attachment, a small Torx key, and, as I mentioned, the instruction manual. Now, I suggest we take a detailed look at the actual cultivator attachment, the KR401MP. Just like most other MAKITA attachments, it has a total length of approximately 95 centimeters or 37.4 inches. This means that, in conjunction with the respective multifunction drive, for example, the UX01 here, we have a total length of about 1.95 meters or 6.4 feet. It is easily possible to work in an upright position, so we don't have to bend or anything like that. In that regard, it's really very comfortable, and in addition, we can naturally operate this attachment just as well with these two multifunction drives. By the way, I've already presented each of these multifunction drives in detail, including the DUX18, the DUX60, and the UX01. If you haven't watched these videos yet, I suggest you take a look at them now. I'll link them up here on the top right corner of the info card. In connection with that, I also measured the weight of the KR401MP once again. The entire attachment weighs approximately 3,200 grams or 7.05 pounds, so it's not necessarily lightweight in my opinion. But of course, it's clear that we don't work with this attachment in the air or anything like that, only on the ground. In this case, the weight has a positive effect because the heavier the attachment, the less pressure we have to apply afterwards. In my opinion, that's very, very good, and in connection with the respective multifunction drive, quite comfortable. As usual, at the back, we have the drive system of the respective attachment, just like with other MAKITA attachments, currently covered with the rubber cap to prevent dirt from getting onto the shaft. And as I mentioned earlier, we can easily mount this attachment on all MAKITA battery-powered multifunction drives, such as the DUX18, DUX60, and UX01, and also the gasoline-powered attachments. So there's quite a wide selection available. The connection with the respective multifunction drive is also the same as usual. Just open the locking mechanism on the multifunction drive, insert the attachment, and as you can see, it connects automatically, indicated by the small red button. Then lock it in place with the black lever, and the attachment is ready for use. But before we move on to the test, let's take a closer look at the unit up front, which is the heart of the cultivator attachment. On the left and right sides, we can see the two rotor blades in black. This achieves a wide cultivation width of 220 millimeters or 8.7 inches, compared to the KR400MP, which only manages 160 millimeters or 6.3 inches. So the KR401MP is 60 millimeters or 2.4 inches wider than the smaller version. This is the only difference between these two models. The KR401 has a total width of 220 millimeters, while the smaller KR400 is only 160 millimeters wide. If you think, well, 160 millimeters is enough for me personally, then the KR400 is probably the one for you. But as I mentioned, I will provide links to both versions in the video description below. Again, on the left and right sides in black, we have the two rotor blades, each marked with a small white arrow. The corresponding rotation direction means that the cultivator attachment or the rotor blades naturally rotate forward. And as you can see, each rotor blade has a total of 6 individual tines. Furthermore, it's worth mentioning that the disassembly of the two rotor blades is kept quite simple. After use, it is not uncommon for numerous roots to have trapped around the hub, the blades to be worn out, or even some tines to be broken. Then it's time to dismantle the rotor blade. For this purpose, we find on the corresponding hub on the left and right sides a securing pin and another pin which lock the rotor blade in place. Also visible here are these 3 small silvery screws. They're used to mount the blade onto the holder. As mentioned, a small torque key is included in the delivery. With it, we can loosen these 3 small screws, mount the new blade onto the holder, and then attach it to the spindle. And thus, the attachment is ready for use again if the blade should be worn out. The same procedure, of course, applies to the other side. Directly below, we can now see the gearbox of the cultivator attachment. Because we want a low speed but high power at the bottom, Makita specifies a gear ratio of 1:43, which means 43 rotations at the top and 1 rotation at the blade. One can calculate accordingly what rotational speeds we have at the bottom, but they should not be many. It's worth mentioning that the gearbox also needs to be lubricated regularly. For this purpose, we see on the right side this small grease nipple specified by Makita with a maintenance interval of 25 hours. This means that after 25 hours, you should open the grease nipple at the bottom and add approximately 30 milliliters of grease to ensure proper lubrication of the gearbox. The gearbox itself is labeled by Makita as a high-performance gearbox, so it should be durable. And as for the housing, I would say we have aluminum die casting, so the generated heat should be dissipated well. But I suggest that will be revealed in the test, of course. What else is there to say? Directly behind, we see a black plastic protective cover to prevent sand and stones from hitting us directly. Here we have dimensions of 23 by 26 centimeters or 9 by 10 inches, so it's also nice and compact. And very importantly, we can adjust this cover a bit, as seen on the right and left sides with 2 small screws, also compatible with the small torque key. So we loosen the whole thing and we can slide the cover forward and backward. Yes, so far so good. We've now taken a detailed look at the large cultivator attachment from Makita, the KR401MP, and now I would say it's time for the practical test. Therefore, I'll briefly reassemble the second rotor blade and then we'll see each other again in the test. I'm very excited to see what performance we can expect from this piece. I hope you are too, so sit back. Let's start with the practical test now. And with that, let's move on to the practical test and see how the large cultivator attachment from Makita performs. To extract the maximum power from this attachment, as mentioned before, I used the powerful 40-volt XGT drive, the UX01. Along with it, A large 4 ampere hour battery, freshly charged, and the job should be a piece of cake, at least in theory. Let's find out how it looks in practice. Unfortunately, I didn't have a flower bed or anything similar available where I could easily use the cultivator, so I spontaneously decided to convert a small green area in my garden into arable land. That means using the grass trimmer beforehand to remove as much grass and weeds as possible, rake it together, and we're ready to go. Then I finally unleashed the cultivator attachment. At maximum power, the initial changes to the ground were quite noticeable. Contrary to my expectations, the multifunction drive in combination with the cultivator attachment had no trouble loosening the firm grass layer. Only at the beginning, I had to exert a bit more pressure to get the attachment into the ground. Small roots in the upper layer were also not a problem. For optimal results, I would recommend pulling the device toward your body while it's activated. This makes the entire work noticeably more exhausting, but on the other hand, speeds up the cultivation process significantly. During normal operation, I couldn't detect any significant power losses in conjunction with the 40-volt drive. Thanks to the small gear ratio of 1:43, the attachment has good pulling power, and even when applying strong pressure, there is no significant difference felt. As for how it looks on the other multifunction drives, I can't say for sure at the moment. However, I can imagine that the small 18-volt drive in particular could potentially reach its limits. Furthermore, it's worth mentioning the cultivation width. Compared to the KR400MP, the KR401MP is significantly wider with a total width of 220 millimeters, which is an additional 80 millimeters. In my opinion, this allows for effortless processing of a medium-sized area. However, caution should be exercised with larger roots. I would say that roots up to a maximum of 8 millimeters pose no problem. At maximum speed, there may be a slight jerk and the root is through. However, one should be cautious with larger calibers, as it could cause the cultivator attachment to become self-propelled and pull you forward. On the other hand, I believe the final result is quite impressive. The previously compacted ground is now completely loosened and free of roots. Depending on the intensity of the area being worked on, I would claim that the KR401 can cultivate up to a maximum depth of 30 centimeters. After working on the area shown in the video, the large 40-volt 4 ampere hour battery still had 2 out of 4 bars remaining. In my opinion, this is more than sufficient for this demanding task. Additionally, it was necessary to clean and remove roots from the cultivator attachment. This process is relatively simple since the 2 rotor blades can be removed without tools. Afterwards, the roots could be removed with a knife or another sharp object, and the blades can be reassembled, and work can continue. In summary, I can say that the KR401MP cultivator attachment from Makita undoubtedly provides excellent service and saves a significant amount of time and effort. The only requirement is a powerful multifunction drive like the UX01. In my opinion, it's definitely a worthwhile investment for those who regularly work in the garden and flower beds. So far, so good with this new video. Please feel free to share your opinion or your experience in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to your feedback. And that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up to support my work. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and activate the bell icon to stay updated and not miss any future videos. You can find the current prices in the video description below. Thank you very much for your support, and with that, I would say take care and see you next time. Goodbye.